Hi everyone, this is going to be a clay lesson on making a clay dog. And before we begin our dog, hopefully I have read you a story called Lumpido. And it's about this little dachshund who was owned by this man here. His name is Pablo Picasso, and he was a very famous artist, and he did some paintings of his little dog Lumpido. So if I don't read it to you before, I will certainly read it to you after. But let's get started with the clay. So what you're going to get in a few minutes is a piece of clay like this. You're going to get a popsicle stick, which is going to be your cutting tool. You'll get a toothbrush and this very little cup of slip. And all slip is, well, I call it the clay glue, but it's just clay and water. All right, let's get started. The first thing you're going to do when you get your piece of clay, and notice how I have it the long way, you're going to cut it in half. So I'm going to take my popsicle stick and just cut this in half. I'm going to set one piece aside because this is the piece I'm going to be making the other parts of my dog with. Now, the dog we're making is a dachshund, so I like to call those dogs hot dog dogs, and this is going to be the dog's body. So we have a rectangle here. The first thing we want to do is kind of soften up those edges here so they're not so pointy. So I'm just kind of gently doing that to kind of round them. I'm going to tap the bottom like this, and now I'm going to just roll it. And I'm rolling it on this board, and as I roll it, it gets a little bit longer. So when it gets longer, I'm just going to tap it down a little bit more and roll it along. All right, so, and if I see something, I can just smooth out any wrinkles, cracks in the clay. All right, pretty good. Now, personally, I think this is a little too long, and I don't want that to be too skinny. So this is a good width, but it's a little too long for me. So I'm going to take it and just measure here. I think that's a good size. So I'm going to just cut off a piece of that. All right. And I'm just going to shape this here. Now, so that's the first step. The second step is you're going to pinch out a little tail. So it always helps to just put my finger in the water, and here I'm just going to pinch out a tail. Now you can see my fingers might have been a little too wet, so I'm going to just dry it off here. And I'm just going to pinch out some clay, and here is the dachshund's tail. Now the one thing you want to be careful of is you don't want to make it too skinny where it's super fragile. So I think that looks pretty good. So far I have the dog's body and his tail. I'm going to set that down. I'm going to come back to this piece of clay, this extra piece of clay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off a piece to become the dog's head. So I'll do that, and I'm going to take it in my hands and roll it. Now the one thing I want to mention about clay is the more you handle it with your hands, the drier it becomes. So you don't want to just take this and squish it in your hands and play with it. You want to be careful. Now I'm going to measure this. I think that dog head looks a little big. So just like I did with the body, I'm going to go back and maybe cut a piece off and then roll it back into a sphere again. All right, let's see how that looks. Yes, I think that looks good. Now to attach clay to clay, that's what this is for. It's called slip, but like I mentioned earlier, all it is clay and water. And the toothbrush is how we score or scratch up the surface of the clay. So I'm going to scratch up the surface because this is where I want to attach the head, right here. And then I'm going to score the surface of the head. And I'm going to place that down, and you want to be careful. You're just going to firmly press it, but you don't want to squish anything out of shape. And I'm going to go back to my popsicle stick and I'm just going to blend the clay together because I want to make sure it really sticks. Now anytime, if your hands get too wet, it's always good to, as you can see, I was wiping it right on my work surface. You can do that, or a piece of toweling. Alright, so notice how that is nicely connected. Alright, so now we've got the body, the tail, the head. Now we have to start adding those details. So I'm going to first add the ears. So I just cut off that piece from the head. So I'm going to go back and cut this in half and roll it in half and see if I press that down. And you can see the clay is starting to get a little dry because of those cracks. Let's see, that looks like a good ear. So I'm going to press it. And again, you just have to visually measure. Like, do you like that size ear? Now look what I did. If I just stuck it there like that, what would happen is this would dry, and when it dries, it falls right off. So you've got to make sure that you connect it or slip and score it so it stays in place. If there's anything that you do not do, you will find that it pops off. It'll either pop off when it dries, or it's going to pop off in the kiln. Alright, so I've blended that ear in place. So now let me do the next ear. And again, those ears were equal lengths, so I pinched it to make it flat, but not too flat. And so I've made this kind of teardrop shape. And now I'm going to put the ear over here. I'm going to score it. And then score the ear part. And then attach it. Oops, and you can see it does get slippery, so you have to be careful. Now you can do the blending with your finger rather than the popsicle stick, but I find that with super small things like this, the popsicle stick works great. Alright, now the one thing you're going to notice is my dog doesn't have a snout. We're going to leave it plain like this, and then when it comes to painting, we're going to add some details. I have one thing left to do, and that's the dog's legs. So we're going to follow the same guidelines. We're going to take the popsicle stick and we're going to just cut in half. And of course we know that dogs have 4 legs, so I need 4 equal pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now these look like they might be a little short, but let's see. I'm going to roll this here. Now you're going to have a couple different ways to put your legs on. So before I glue them on with the slip, I'm going to show you some ideas, and you can choose how you want your dog to be standing. Alright, so what I didn't say, which I should have, is that you want to make these equal length. Okay? So of course this one's too long, but I'm going to show you what happens, or what you can do when that happens. Here and here. So you can see they're all different lengths. So what I'm going to do, I like this flat side this way. I can just take, okay, so this is a good length. I'm just going to cut this piece off, and then I'll cut a little bit of that off, and then a little bit of this. Okay, and then they should be pretty good. Alright, let's talk about how we can position our dog's legs. One way, and remember, I'm not gluing them officially yet. One way is we glue 2 back here, and then the front ones can be out in front, so the dog is kind of laying down. Let me see if I can find one for you. Here's what one person did last year. So you can see the legs are straight. These are out front, like that. It's hard to see in the camera, but you can see that way. So that's one way you can do it. Another way Someone else did it is they chose to have their dog lay right out like that. You can do that, but look what happened. This little guy's leg fell off in the kiln because it wasn't glued on well enough. So you decide. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, I always start with the back legs first. I don't know why, I just do. And I'm going right to the end of that kind of rectangle shape. And I'm going to first take this leg, put it here, and I'm going to blend it into place. Okay, and then I'm going to rest it down. Put it here, and it's always the same steps. All right, and that's pretty good. And then I would follow the same steps for the front legs. I'm going to come here, score it, and I'm going to come here. I'm going to do this one at the same time. And put it in place. And remember, I said it gets a little slippery, so you have to kind of be careful. And then I blend with my popsicle stick. I'll put this one here. Oops. Blend it with my popsicle stick. Now I'm going kind of fast to end this. But then, voila, my dog is done for today. All right, I can't wait to see what you do, and have fun.